in advance.
Yeah, so the audience knows. Right? Hey, Sam. I'm going to go ahead and look at my my fancy camera angle here and introduce everybody to the show. So, all right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Deitz Playbook. All right, this week, I picked a couple of statements off of our little docket, of statements that John has come up with over the years, centered around the concept of how to command respect. Because I've gotten into a lot of different conversations with people about the difference between demanding and commanding respect. And I think that throughout this week and the end of last week, a couple of different situations have come up that I've needed to address that. People ask, how do you command respect when you walk into a room? How do you get people to listen when you talk? And whether it's questions in a traditional form of leadership or it's just amongst your friend group, I know that today is going to bring you value along that front, specifically because of the way that John looks at these specific statements that we're going to talk about today. I know that I've used them in my daily life. I've had friends of mine ask how I'm so calm in certain situations or how I'm able to command a room. And it's really because I operate by the Deitz Playbook. There's no secret to it, right? We're literally giving you the playbook. That's why we called it that, to operate off of, that is going to allow you to get these things done. So with that, I would like to welcome for another week in a row, Mr. John Deitz to the show.
Welcome. Thank you. Good to be here.
No problem, my friend. Well, one thing that you'll notice if you're, looking at the screen here, you'll see that John isn't wearing his sling currently, which is a good thing. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. 3rd of July, I was allowed to quit using it. And so, yeah, we're moving forward.
Good. One step at a time.
Yeah. One step at a time. Always. As long as we're moving a little bit forward.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. So with that topic in mind, the first thing that I picked up, actually, before we start diving into that, what I really want to point out is for everybody that is listening right now, as we're going through this, the entire point of this is for you to start a watch party on your timeline so that we can share it with friends, right? Because you don't want to hoard all of the good stuff to yourself. That's selfish. Make sure that you're sharing it. But then also, if something comes up, and I just talked about this in the live stream before this started, if something comes up that you're dealing with in your life or something centered around this that you really want to get addressed, feel free to shoot a message into the comments. We can see those live. Shoot me a message in my inbox if you don't want to, name yourself. You want to remain anonymous. We can answer questions that way as well. This is not just about me and John talking about these 3 points to bring you value, but also to get your own questions answered. So those are my 2 things. Share it so that you're not selfish. And if you have a question, feel free to ask. We won't bite. Yet. Or ever. Never mind. So we're going to move into these first questions here. First thing that I came up with out of this long docket of all of these different statements was this: only wince once, do it right the first time.
Well, that actually comes from my father, which was, growing up, we were the line between poverty and middle class. And so money was always tight. But my dad would always buy the very best he could afford. He'd buy the best tools, the best, for one reason, because he thought that it was actually the most prudent financially in the long run, because the best you can afford should, in theory, last longer, because, we hope we get what we pay for. And so back in the early 60s, he bought a circular saw for like $70. That'd be like $700 or $800 today. And he didn't have any money hardly, but he bought it anyway. And that saw lasted him his entire life. And so when I say only wince once, you wince, ouch, that hurt, when you pay the initial fee. But normally you get what you pay for. And so normally you're happy with what you bought after you get over the pain of what it cost you.
Yeah. I know that, I mean, my grandfather kind of operated off of the same principles. And my dad really too. It was, I've never really applied it to like a product, I guess. You know, like you said, you buy that one thing, and then if you take care of it well, it'll last you a really long time.
Yeah, it has a second phase 2. But go ahead, right?
And I've always applied it to actual like tasks. You know what I mean? I know an example that always comes to mind for me is cleaning the barn was a big thing, and my grandpa was really focused on it being done right. Right, you're not just for anybody that's been a farmer for any length of time. The majority of animals will pick a certain corner of the pen, and that's just where they go. And then the rest of the stall is actually relatively clean, right? And a way to get around spending a whole lot of time cleaning the barn was just to clean out the one corner, shuffle up the hay a little bit, put some new straw down, you know, in the corner, make it look nice, and then try to get out of there, right? Because then it was clean, because you knew that the rest of it was clean. But his big thing, and my dad and my mom's big thing, was always you switch out all of the hay, all of the straw. You know, I keep intermixing those, but
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So you always switch out the entire stall, not just that one corner. And I remember a couple of times trying to just switch out that one corner, and then finding some, you know, like a pile on the other side of the stall, and they're like, "You didn't clean the pen." I was like, "Yeah, I did." They're like, "What's this over here?" I just totally blanked. I didn't even look in that corner because I was so focused on trying to cheat it,
right,
that I missed it. And so that's kind of what I've always attached to it. Like, if you're doing something right and really doing it correctly, wholeheartedly, the entire process, you don't run the risk of accidentally missing a turd pile in the opposite side of the pen.
Right. Well, and that's what I meant by phase 2. My dad was a hard, tough grinder for work and for getting things done, but most importantly, getting it done the right way the first time. And so my daughters and I, which they're hard workers, but one time one of them complained a little bit about something. And I said, wow, what a luxury to be able to complain. Because in my house, you couldn't complain at all, because there's only one way to get out of the job. And that was to complete it and complete it correctly the first time. It was the only way out. And so, and you didn't want my dad at any time finding where you had cut it short, cheated, or just didn't do it correctly. There was just zero tolerance for that. So anyway, so that's again, like I said, it was phase 2, because that was another thing about only once. You want to just like work through it, and then when it's finally over, you know it's done right, and you don't have to go back and do it again.
Yeah. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that product that's purchased, because I think that outside of just applying it to a product that was purchased, I mean, I really think that you can apply that entire principle, like the whole doing it right the first time, wholeheartedly, full effort, really making it happen, to relationships, friendships. I mean, we talked about this last week a little bit, and it's kind of bringing back a little bit of that. You know, you find one of those 3 to 5 people,
right?
You invest in that relationship, you do it right, you show them, you know, that you're a person of integrity, that you have character, that you're going to have their back at 3 o'clock in the morning when they need to tell you that there's a body but not who in the trunk.
Right.
That principle can really just be expanded out, I think, outside of just the physical and the task stuff, just into that relationship space, I think.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're taking care of those people and doing that right.
Doing it right, doing it honestly, being fair, being objective, being just a good friend.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and say hello to Corey Ramsey, Rebecca English, who's actually was one of my captains when I was stationed out in Mansfield. Sarah Roush, Dylan, Greg Marciano, and Mr. Hendershot. Cameron George, welcome. Corey, good to see you as always. So for those of you that are just tuning in, this is the Deitz Playbook with Mr. John Deitz, where you're you're free to ask questions outside of the statements that we're asking. I know that, this is kind of the first time that I'm really pushing and asking you guys to interact. So I understand if, it's going to take a little bit of time for you to get used to that. But I wanted to make sure that we planted that seed now, because as you can tell, we're switching camera angles and we're starting to up our game a little bit. I want to make sure that you understand that we're doing this for you. John is extremely passionate about coming out here and giving advice and listening to people and genuinely wanting to help people, which is exactly why he fits directly in with what Apex Communications is doing. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm not being selfish in holding one of my key mentors behind the curtain. I'm really trying to push to get you guys to understand how valuable having somebody like this in your life can really be. So with that, question 2, I think is going to be interesting because it kind of skirts that line, I think, between what people might anticipate as operating with integrity and then also pushing that boundary a little bit for the right reasons. And this is why I'm curious to see where you take it. So the second question is, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Just get it done.
Well, yeah, that is, there's times when things come up when you're trying to push a deadline, push a product, get something accomplished. If it's get the toys built before your kids wake up at Christmas, if it's, something you're doing for work, something you're doing for your family, sometimes, and I don't want it to sound like it's not integral, but what's important to know is that you're trying to get things done. And so instead of, seems like so much time is wasted in committee, wasted in asking, what's the protocol? As long as you are a person of integrity and character, so you're not going out there stealing, cheating, ripping off, doing whatever. What you're doing is you're just trying to get the job done and be creative and getting it done. And so in that thing, there was a saying with my daughters when they were young, and it was this: if you spill the grape juice on the white carpet, that's a mistake. If you put the ottoman over it and hide it, that's an issue of completely different magnitude.
Oh yeah.
And so when you're trying to get stuff done, sometimes you just want to just make sure you get it done with as much integrity and character as you can. And then if somebody comes back and asks you about it, hopefully you can get from forgiveness. But as long as you're doing the best you can, honestly, to get things done and get it completed then I think that's the time to go, listen, I'm just going to get this done. I know I'm not breaking any laws or anything. I'm just going to get this done. And if it's not right, I'll ask for forgiveness, but we're right up against a deadline or we need to get this. Christmas morning doesn't happen twice in 1 year. If you got to get stuff done, you got to get stuff done. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, I think that just trying to think of how to put this kind of situation into words, I guess. There's been times, and outside of just the entrepreneurial journey, because I know that I talk about that a lot, but it's the phase of life that I'm in, so I happen to relate to it the most. When it comes to asking for forgiveness rather than permission, for me, in that context, when it comes to, there's so much time people spend in this paralysis by analysis. Right. There's an example that I used when I gave a speech at the 80th Airlift Wing. And it was basically, you have two groups of people, right? And say we have a rock on the couch and we have a rock on this table. And the first group is all leaders. And they're trying to figure out how to get the rock from point A to point B. But they all want to lead. They all want to take charge. Right. They all want it to be done their way. They all have the best solution. The rock might get moved eventually, but it's after a lot of teeth pulling, head butting, and right. Nail scratching, whatever is going on. And I guess there's 3 groups total. So the second group is all followers. Nobody's willing to take the lead until somebody grabs somebody by the hair and throws them into the middle of the circle and says, that stinks. You're right. Now in charge. Right. They also will just be staring at the rock for a long period of time. Eventually, there needs to be somebody that's willing to because I think leadership too is partially being willing to take the failure punch directly to the face if things go wrong. And then if if you get credit, giving it back to the team. That's a weird dynamic for
Right.
people to get. But if you have one person that's willing to put their neck on the guillotine to just say, hey, I know everybody's talking about this process. Your idea is really good. We're going to do it that way. You, and you, let's do this. Let's get it executed. Brock gets moved. Same thing with the followers. If one of those followers were willing to step up and put their neck on the guillotine for the group, they would be able to say, okay, I'm going to step out of here. We're going to do it this way. Can we try this, this, and this? Let's get it done. Let's move it forward. All it takes is that one person to be willing to ask forgiveness rather than permission to really expedite a group out of that, just headbutting phase.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too. There's too many times if you get alphas involved, alpha male, alpha female, whomever, just alphas involved. Like you just said earlier, everybody wants to lead and then get the credit and away you go. I think a real leader needs to be willing to just help. If somebody else has got a good thing going and they really understand what they're doing, then you don't have to get the credit for this. Just help to advance the cause. What do we say all the time? Advance the cause. Even if it's just incrementally, advance the cause, advance the cause. And so if you can come in there and advance the cause, even if, like I'm a big fan of being a covert operator. Let's just get it done, get the pieces in place, get it all done, and then whoever's out front is good for them. But let's just get the job done, get it done correctly, effectively, and get it done. But there's a certain amount of ego you have to pull back if you have an ego issue, and pull it back and go, listen, all 9 of us can't lead.
Right.
So let's figure out who is going to lead, and then the rest of us come in as support staff and get the thing done. Then, if let's say the wheels come off, somehow that guy can't finish, then if you're the best candidate for the job, step up, finish it, and get it done.
Yep.
But at the same time, you don't have to go walk around with beating your chest going, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm the leader. Let's get the stuff done at whatever cost. And if you have to be, I don't know if it's sometimes it happens in football, I don't know if it's rugby, but sometimes you got to be the guy in the back of the pile pushing to get the guy over the line.
Right.
And so if that's what the case is, fine. And then sometimes in my life, I've seen it over and over again where you had to have somebody drag somebody across the finish line to get it done. But what happened at the end of the day? You got it done. Hopefully you got it done with character. Everybody's happy with the product you put on the field.
Yeah. I think that, like what you just said about being the one pushing from the back, if you're in a situation where like leadership isn't always, the spotlight. I personally 110% definitely don't think so. With leadership being this like ever flowing ebb and dynamic thing, it's never the same thing twice. And asking, being willing to consistently, I'm coming back to this point, being willing to put yourself out on the line. If that guy or girl that, is leading the crew eats it halfway through, someone's going to have to step in. That's the perfect time to step up and not seeing, as long as you step up and say, I'm doing this for the benefit of the group and I'm doing this so that we can get the job done.
Right.
If you can establish, you want to know how to command a room? If you can establish a reputation for getting stuff done and getting it done the right way, and that if you shake someone's hand, they can trust that it's going to happen when you say it's going to happen, then you can start commanding a room.
I think can I interject something? I think the best way to command a room is when you have zero interest in commanding the room.
Okay.
No interest in commanding the room. I'm here to bring whatever it is I can bring to the table to be as effective and efficient as I can. Should the stars fall in line that I command the room? Okay, I get it. But at the same time, I don't think that should ever be your objective. I think your objective should be not to command the room, but to advance the room.
Yep. There we go.
Advance the room and make everybody in the room better. And okay, so once out of 10, it looks like you commanded the room. Okay, that's fine. But I believe you ultimately garner more respect and more. I think the less sunshine or spotlight you look for, the better chance you're going to garner the respect.
Right.
But I just think that the whole point of the whole thing is, again, not to go in, look at me. The point is how can we make everybody look around? How can we make everybody in this room even a little bit incrementally. We use that word all the time.
Yep.
Incrementally, how can we make everybody just a little bit better? How the best way to raise the gondola is to make the balloon above me go up.
Right. Right.
And it can't help but to drag me up too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So as long as we all get there, what's the difference?
Right. I think that it's a principle that I've heard in selling all the time. That like if you want to sell more product, stop trying to sell more product.
Yeah.
Where it's more focused on the customer relationship, more focused on taking care of people, making. Les Brown says it really well too, where he says if you want to be successful, help other people achieve their dreams, and that's the whole thing. You know, the whole rising tide idea.
Yeah.
If you're a boat and you can get the ocean to rise up, it raises you with it.
Right.
Rather, the alternative thought process is I'm going to advance me, and I'm going to command a room out of fear or power, which is never the way to go about it. If you want people, because I think what people are actually going for here with commanding a room, quote unquote, or having respect, is for people to hear them when they talk. I think that's what it really boils down to, is people want to be heard. And when they speak, they want the room to be like silent, and they want to have crickets. But if you're the boy that cried wolf constantly, no one's going to pay attention to you when you talk. If you never provide any value, no one's going to pay attention when you talk. If you're constantly talking about me, and how awesome you are, no one's going to pay attention when you talk. So like all of these things lead into directly what you said. If you want to command the room, stop trying to command the room and focus on advancing the cause.
Yeah, advance the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Advancing the room.
Yeah.
And
then so what? If everybody doesn't think you're the best show in the room, so what? So what? Did I help the guy over there that's not saying anything because he's so meek and mild, he's intimidated because the crowd we're in, they can't say nothing? How do you bring him to the forefront? Right. And how do you bring him? I say, come here a minute, whatever your name is. Come up and let me ask you a couple questions. Now, let me tell you this. If you make that guy feel like $1 million because you moved him to the center of the room and ask him a couple questions and ask his opinion, who won that night? He did.
Yep.
Where's the crime in that?
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I love that. So for everyone that's listening, we do have an anonymous question in, so thank you for that. And I'll ask John here in a second. But I see, there's a bunch of you that have been tuning in and out. Jake Sowers, good to see you as always. Eric, I love seeing you in streams. Keenan, pop back in. For all of you guys that are watching right now, make sure that you're sharing it on your own timeline, because that is the only way that we're able to do what we do and do it well, is by having your support. So thank you so much for that. And what we're going to do now is ask the question that we got submitted through the anonymous Dropbox. Mr. Anonymous asked John, in relation to the second question, so the better to ask forgiveness than permission, can you remember a distinct defining moment when you first used that principle in your life, or one that sticks with you and when you think about that lesson?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story from when I was young. We had a precious saint of God, beautiful, sweet woman lived next door. And I was out ringing doorbells and running at age 10 or 12, whatever age you do that. And I told you about my father. He was no joke. I mean, he was about discipline and all that stuff. So one night I was ringing Esther's doorbell, and she called over to my house, and she said to my dad, she said, Tom, I think John's ringing our doorbell and running. I don't care that he's doing it, but there's ice on the porch, and I'm afraid he'll fall and get hurt. And so when I came in the house, my dad, in his deep, booming, dangerous voice, said, John, and I knew that wasn't good. He was in bed because he was going to work midnights. And so I walked into his room, and he said, Esther says you're ringing her doorbell and running. Are you? And it was like time stood still, because I knew the gravity of the situation if he knew I was lying. And I remember thinking, and I said, yeah, I was doing it. And he said, the only reason that I'm not going to get out of this bed and whip you for that is because you told the truth.
Wow.
And that etched honesty in my life from that moment on, for real. Now, as I age, like I said, that's been, close to 50 years ago.
I was going to say,
I still remember it like it was yesterday.
Going that far back.
And I still remember the principle of that. And so it was way better. I mean, I rolled the dice, but I told the truth. And those of you, of course, you don't know my father, and you don't understand how severe corporal punishment was in my house. I mean, it was at a criminal level in today's standard. But nonetheless, I rolled the dice. I just told the truth, and it saved the day. And then after that, I thought, if that's what telling the truth gets you, I'm gonna ride that one all the way through.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, so I hope that's helpful. But that's it. It changed my life.
Yeah, I'm going to before we get into the final one, because the final one's actually about your father, and we talked about it just in passing a little bit on the show. This last principle, but I'm going to make a little shameless plug here for all of the fellas out there. If you're having lady problems, right? You're having issues in your relationship or anything else like that. Let me give you a hint. And it's not because I'm some guru. I actually heard this from John. I'm just stealing his spotlight for right now. So she asks you a question. She probably already knows the answer. So just tell the truth, right? Whether it's, where were you? What were you doing? Or if you got this chore done, or if she calls you and said, hey, hon, did you get the steaks out that I told you to get out of the freezer earlier today to defrost them, as you're shoving them in the microwave, trying to get them defrosted because she's on her way home. Just tell her that. Be transparent. Makes life 1,000 times easier, whether it's relationships or anything else. But that's something that I've consistently heard from other fellas my age that are having issues. It seems to be every single time. And this is also because I'm an ICU nurse and I sit at the nurse's station and take notes. I'm like, okay, do this, don't do that. Do this, definitely don't do that. The word relax, no longer in my vocabulary. Take a deep breath, honey. Kind of pushing buttons, right? So, but there's all those little lessons that you learn over time.
Yeah.
I think that going that far back and having that moment etched in time is beautiful. That's something that I think parents, if you're listening, can sometimes underestimate how much that simple action, or actually lack of action in that instance, just etched, like you said, that principle of honesty is now forever in your brain.
You always have to reward good behavior. I don't care if you're training dogs. I don't care if you're training horses. I don't care if you're raising children. I don't care if you're a chief of a company. You always have to reward good behavior. In the case of horses, many more times. Their memory isn't as quick. In case of dogs, not that much. In case of your children, right away. But nonetheless, you have to reward good behavior in relationships if you want them to be successful. So,
all right. So we'll move into this final question here. And our final, it's not a question. These are all statements. I'm used the show that we have on right before this is just nothing but question. So I picked this one to kind of wrap this up. Because I've heard multiple, people talk about stuff centered around this principle, but I think that the way that you describe it, whether it's been on previous streams or just in conversations that we've had, is so concrete that I think there's no way that people can get around the fact that this very, very simple thing can exponentially increase the amount of respect that people have for you if you're honest about it and you're making your best attempt, right? So the final question or final statement was, if your father says that you have 20 minutes, you only have about 19 to get everything out of the way.
Yeah. Okay. The way that goes is I always say, if my dad tells you he's going to drive through the front door in 20 minutes, you got about 15 minutes or so to get stuff out of the way. And then you need to get out of the way after that. And that's because, his word was concrete. If he said he was going to do something, he was going to do it. Yeah. It was going to happen. And so I remember one night we had no money. I had a pair of penny loafers that had been completely destroyed over time just from me being a young kid. That was my only pair of shoes, was penny loafers. And anybody that's seen penny loafers know how they're threaded on top and the whole thing. Okay, and mine were destroyed. They were literally coming apart in pieces. And my dad told me he was going to make sure I had a good pair of shoes by tomorrow. Okay, the time he made that declaration was probably like 8, 9 o'clock at night. And it was ready for me to go to bed because I slept in the basement. So I went to bed, and in the morning, I hope I never forget this. I came up to what appeared to be a brand new pair of shoes. They were shined. They were tight. They were beautiful. I was so proud to put those on my feet. And what he had done is he sat down like a cobbler, and through the night, he worked to restitch, relace, get those shoes exactly back to brand new as best as he could, because of course the leather was stretched on, but brand new. And then he spent the remainder of his time buffing and polishing those shoes to a shine like a street shoe shine guy would have done. And so when I went to bed, they were literally in pieces. When I woke up the next morning, they were literally like a brand new pair of shoes.
That's awesome.
And so when he told me I was going to get a whipping in the morning, he meant that too. But he also told me when he'd have my shoes ready, they were going to be ready. And they were. They were. So I don't know if you want more examples than that or not, but that was profound. There again, that's going back, damn near 50 years of what a profound impact, and he was just the kind of guy. You want to talk about command and respect. He didn't look to get respect from anyone. But when he died, it was like a mayor or a governor passed away. People lined up for well over an hour to come see him, and he was just a working class hump from the Timken company that was a steel worker. But whatever he did it correctly. Whatever he priced more than fair. When I saw him work around women, he never spoke in any double entendre. It was always incredibly respectful. And he was just a strapping, two-fisted man that was just about being a man, about being correct, about being a good father, a good provider, a good all that kind of stuff. But if he told you that stump was coming out of the ground, the stump was coming out of the ground. And growing up, seeing that daily, if not weekly, if not monthly, but daily, seeing him, pull rabbits out of the hat, you're like, I don't even know how we can do this, Right. We tore down a house one time, one piece of quarter round at a time. I took down the chimney one brick at a time.
Oh, wow.
And it all out of a pickup truck. But he showed up on the job and he said, yeah, we'll do it, and we'll do it for this price. And when the summer was over, the house was all gone. And we had done what he promised, what he gave a man his word he was going to do. So he said he's going to do it.
Brick by brick, round by round.
For real. I mean, it was for real. And so anyway.
Yeah, the easiest thing to get into outside of not actually seeking the commanding respect of the room and everything else like that, I think people try to constantly look for these shortcut answers, right? Something that's constantly just taking them, if I do these 3 things, I will have, earn people's respect. Or if I say I use this tone of voice, or I use my hands so many times in a conversation, there's all of these different things that you can read. It's so much more simple than that.
No, hell no. None of that.
So simple.
Got nothing to do with it.
And some of those are like applicable to public speaking and very specific things. But when it comes to the overarching, ability to gain people's respect, it's being that person that's willing to take, to hold themselves to their word, even if it means taking down a chimney brick by brick.
Hey, you want me to tell you how to get people's respect? Show up on time.
Yeah.
If you tell somebody you're going to be there at 7 o'clock, Be there at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Be there a little bit early maybe, but do not be late. And so what happens to happen is, I've told this to people before, and I don't want to name them because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I've said many times, there's this instrument I'd like to introduce you to. It's called a clock. Okay? And so when you have this clock, and it's real simple, you want to be there at 7. And then you go, okay, now it's going to take me 30 minutes to get there. So I'm going to leave at about 45 minutes early in case traffic gets in the way.
Right.
Okay? And so then you back that up. You go, okay, I got to leave at 6:15. I want to get in the shower. That's going to take 15 minutes. So now it's 6 o'clock. But I want to make sure that I'm right because I got to get some clothes ready. So I'm going to start getting ready at 5:30, maybe 5:15, and start the process.
Right.
And then you go through, right?
Yep.
And then what happens is you show up and you're there 5-10 minutes early.
Yep.
And guess what happens? The next time you say, okay, you said 2:30, I'll see you at 2:30. And when they roll up, 2:30, he's there. Hey, you want to be there? Let's leave for a trip. Let's go at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Ready to go? Yep. Quarter to 6. He's sitting out there waiting.
Yep. Yeah. You don't want to be that person that people know that they have to tell you half an hour beforehand start time so that you get there on time.
Yeah. You want respect?
Yeah.
Be respectful. You want respect? Do what you say you're going to do.
Because,
And there again, you don't have to move a mountain.
yeah.
You don't have to fly an F-14 Tomcat in. What you have to do is just do what you said you're going to do.
And understand that your time isn't the only time that's valuable time.
Right.
Right. The reason why showing up on time is such a powerful statement to people is because subconsciously it tells them that you care about their time and that you believe that their time is just as valuable.
When you say I'm going to show up, can you come help me move my television? Okay. So I'm going to show up with my pickup truck. I'm going to show up with moving blankets. I'm going to show up with binders. I'm going to show up with maybe some extra ropes just in case. Because I want to make sure that whatever pops up, we get that television moved securely, effectively, efficiently, and on time. Just do what you say you're going to do. That's how you command respect.
Right. Just
show up. Just do what you say you're going to do.
Right.
Because guess what? If you look around, anybody that's listening to this podcast right now can tell. Look around in your circle of friends. Is there anybody you know that will truly show up? Really be where you're supposed to be, really honor your request if they say they will? Is there? A lot of people are going to have trouble finding 2 or 3 people that will do that. Mm-hmm. But if you want to be respected, if you want to be, that guy, do what you say you're going to do. Get there, get it done, be helpful. When you're done, pack up your stuff, fold it, put your ropes away, put your whatever away, put it in your truck, drive home. Just do what you say you're going to do.
I love that. So we'll use that to end the traditional question sequences. We did get a couple of anonymous submissions for questions.
All right.
So
let's go.
We'll go ahead and we'll take this first one. And hopefully as we continue to do this, more and more people will be less shy. But our first anonymous question here is, John, do you have any advice about finding fulfilling work and how to succeed in a career? I recently got let go of a position because of coronavirus, and I'm having trouble deciding whether or not I want to go back to that job or take a chance and do something that I actually enjoy doing. Okay,
you ready for this? Take the chance. But here's what you got to understand. I wish Mr. Anonymous would have said who you are because I spoke to you by name. But here's what's important. People go to college or trade school and they pay to go to this school, right? Yes, you do. Mm-hmm. So go find out whatever it is you want to do and go do it for whatever it takes to get in the door, even if it's free. Because even if it's free, it's not costing you to learn. Okay? Let me give you a great example. And I'm ashamed to tell you, I forget the guy's name. But I met a guy one time on a fishing trip up in Alaska. And I was like, hey, how's it going? What do you do? And all this stuff. Well, he was a special teams coach for I believe it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I said, wow, that's amazing. And he said, yeah, he just realized one day he was looking at a program and saw somebody and said, I want to be a ball coach. And so that's what he did. But he went to a team and he started breaking film and work. He begged the guy to get in there for free. He's just going to work for free. And after he was there a few months and they saw he was a good worker, then they put him on at a entry-level payroll, and they gave him a little bit more responsibility. And then as time went on, they saw that he had good football and business acumen, and they elevated him to another one. Now he's making real money, legitimate money, the kind of stuff you can have an apartment or a house or whatever. You go, and then he worked his way up till he became a fantastic football coach, and had a marketable product that he could take to any team in the NFL. And like most coaches, he moved around and ended up working at different jobs in the NFL. But the secret of the whole thing is everybody comes out of the box going, hey, I think I'm worth $100,000. I'm worth $250,000 a year. I'm worth whatever it is. Okay, all right. If you're worth it, perfect. It won't take long for people to figure it out if you're really a superstar. But the secret is getting in to your dream job and working at it. I don't care if it's TV. I don't care if it's construction. I don't care what it is. Do whatever it is you have to do to get in there at the most economical price for the owner. Because at the end of the day, what's happening is everybody is out there trying to make a business successful. If you can help that business be successful, they're going to need you. And so it's just a matter of you figuring out a way to get in there and do the work to show them what you can do. That's simple. That's good advice.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. That's solid. I think that there's a lot of people that are getting thrown off that track, and they're probably sitting in that spot, whether they're willing to ask the question or not. I think there's been so much instability because of coronavirus and anything else. You could have been experiencing something prior to COVID-19 hitting, but 110% I will plug. If you have an inkling of a thought or a wrenching in your gut to go try something that you're passionate about, give it a shot. And to John's point, if you can find a way to provide exponential amounts of value to a company, that's how you earn that company's respect.
I knew a guy that was a chef, and he chefed all over the country, and he went different places in the country because he wanted to be in the New England states for a while, and maybe down in Florida and the Keys for a while, and he wanted to do something out in Seattle for a while, right, and then Hawaii. This is a true story. And so I was like, how can you go to these country clubs and these 5-star restaurants and get jobs? And he said, it's real simple. I go in, I find out who the head chef is, and I ask him, can I work for you for one day for free? Chef goes, yeah. And after that day, he's employed.
That's badass.
All over the country, he did that.
Wow.
After that day, he's employed. So number one, here's the thing you got to have. Here, let me explain something else to you. So many people, for whatever reason, don't have the confidence to do whatever it is that they want to do. And I don't know about women, but I know men really seem to struggle with that a lot. And so the thing of it is you have to have the confidence to go in there, tell somebody what you can do, and do it. Now, should you come up short, you got to stand up, dust your shit off, get ready to go, and go do it again. But it's a matter of confidence. When my girls were babies, I made up my mind. My daughters are going to be well-rounded, well-versed, confident, just ass-kicking women. And that's what I set out for them before they were born. That's what they were going to be coming out of my house, our house. And so I wanted to make sure that that's what happened. But whatever it is you got to do before you say, hey, I want to be a movie star, make sure you're schooled, make sure you're trained, make sure you're ready to go. If you want to be a chef, make sure you know what you're doing so you can go prepare the food right and do what you say. But if you have the confidence, go do it. Go do it. Just go in there and do it. And then at the end of the day, guess what? You usually walk out of there with a job.
Yeah. That's the way to go. All right. I'm not even going to spend any more time on that. I think that was answered extremely well. We'll do one more here with the time that we have left. And this one does have a name. So this one is Eric. and he actually owns Dr. Clean Detailing Services located within Glenmore Estates.
So good, Mark.
So we'll give him a shout out
Yeah.
for his business. If you want some good detailing work done to your vehicle, definitely hit him up. I've personally had my vehicle done there. He does a phenomenal job, and it's affordable. So you're supporting local. Definitely check him out. He says, John, you always seem to have such a level head,
Right.
In stressful situations. I have a friend that's dealing with getting screwed over by somebody that was extremely close to him, and I'm having trouble giving him advice on how to cope with the situation and move forward. How would you deal with a friend of yours that you previously trusted screwing you over to the extent that you're now angry? Thanks, and hopefully you can bring some insight.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one, and it's pretty simple. There's a phrase that I coined some years ago that I live by, and it goes like this: there's nothing wrong with what's right. Okay? There's nothing wrong with what's right. And so that means that if somebody screwed you over, and that's the truth, there's nothing wrong with you going and confronting them, not beating them up, not doing whatever, but just have an honest conversation. And at the end of the conversation, if it doesn't go your way, the answer to that is, if you can live with it, I can live without it. And so you go and have an honest conversation with them about whatever happened, and then that's the thing. Then if it doesn't go your way and you realize you got screwed again, you just go, hey, it's real simple. If you can live with it, I can live without it. There's a word I learned years ago from a guy named Carlos Hathcock. At the time, Carlos was the number one sniper in the United States Marine Corps. And at the time, he had more numbers than anybody else. And I was talking to him one time, and I said, Carlos, how do you do it with the green blowing vipers sneaking out through the weeds and all that kind of stuff? And he said to me, it's equanimity. And I said, what? And he said, equanimity. And I go, what's equanimity? And he goes, calm under stress. And then he goes like this, he goes, be cool, man. And you know what? That has meant so much to me over my life, because at the end of the day, getting rattled, getting flustered, throwing stuff, breaking stuff, unless you want drama and for effect, okay. But if you really want to get to the heart of the situation, if you really want to get to the heart of people, use equanimity. Be calm under stress. Be honest in the conversation. There's nothing wrong with what's right. There's nothing wrong with what's right. And then have the conversation. And if it goes your way, great. And if it doesn't, if you can live with it, I can live without it. And you just move on, because somebody taught me years ago, and I wish so bad I could remember who did, but it was in school, and I remember saying, that's not fair. It's not fair. And the person I was saying it to said, hey, John, you got to understand something. Life isn't fair. And that is a fact. If you think it's going to be fair, you're wrong, because it's not. Why does infants die? Why does kids get sick that they shouldn't? Why does the newlyweds get killed in a car accident right after their wedding? Why? You know why? Because life isn't fair. That's why. And so you have to make the best of it. You have to pull yourself up. Like I said, dust your pants off, move forward. And if it doesn't work out, man, it just doesn't work out. But if it does, you've got to make sure that you do everything you possibly can every single time to have the character, have the integrity, do it right. And more times than not, it'll work out for you, but not always. And the reason not always, life isn't fair.
Yeah. I think like when you were talking about escalating and losing that, like the headspace or, all of the different pieces that play into that, I think about, and this eliminating the retaliation side, because obviously the example that I'm about to bring up, they definitely retaliated. But it's always been curious to me, whenever you have mobsters portrayed in a movie, especially like Vito Corleone, right? Never really gets loud, never loses his composure. He's either petting the cat or the pinky comes up and touches the lip, and he almost whispers what he's trying to get across. When you can tell, like, his face is saying, I'm extremely agitated, but he's really like, you show up at my house you know, on the day of my daughter's wedding. Everybody knows that quote. He's not yelling. He's furious, right? That all of this went down, and he's just calm, talking. And there's a lot of things that happened after that. But inside of that one situation, he's just cool, man. He's just having a conversation, keeping it down. But that it almost adds that layer of like intensity to the situation. If everything else is exploding and you're the one solid thing that is keeping a level head, you're showing a lot more of your true colors than everybody else that's around you, because they're now all paying attention to the thing that's not moving the same direction as the rest of the stream. Everybody else is moving this direction. And if you're that one solid point of just cool, calm, and collected, everyone's going to turn to you and be like, okay, we're all freaking out. Why aren't you freaking out? What do you know that we don't know? How can you help us navigate this situation?
Yeah.
And you end up becoming that person because you're cool, calm, and collected most of the time that people are going to come to seek for that advice.
Yeah. Well, you know, years ago as a firefighter, there's no room for big popping off there. Everything has to be calculated, done right. Because there's a lot
rescue and stuff too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, right? When you're doing heavy rescue and weight is hanging on something, that's no time to be a show off. That's time to be calculated, careful, consistent, get things done. And so if you on the times in my life when I was to pop off or make a big scene, I don't think there's ever one time that I looked back at it when it was over and said, boy, I really killed it that time. I really got it right. The times that I have been pleased with how I handled situations is when it was thoughtful, you know, to the point, again, honest, and just, you know, the Bible says a kind word will turneth away wrath. And so if you have the opportunity to be kind and gracious, do that, because that's going to be more beneficial than flying off and dropping a bunch of F-bombs and, you know, jacking somebody against the wall and all that kind of stuff. In my life, there's just never been that much positive that has came out of that kind of behavior. And, you know, as to the mob scene, you know, I'm not for revenge. But at the same time, there's no point in announcing like some big blowhard that it's coming if it's coming anyway.
Right.
You know, when the military gets revenge, they don't tell people it's coming.
Nope.
They just go, uh-oh, you know what? I just heard something. Maybe I shouldn't have been here. So anyway.
And then you just see a white cloud on the infrared screen.
Right.
And it's all gone. Cool. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody that submitted questions. I know we have a couple. I'm going to save them in the bank as we start to build up. So what I'm going to say is this is going to happen outside of next Wednesday. We're going to be taking a break, but every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. From now moving forward, we're going to consistently be here offering you advice and making sure that you have the ability to have access to John in the way that, you know, the anonymous people and then Eric submitted questions today.
So you have questions that people have asked that we're just not going to get to today.
Yeah, it looks like there was another one that got pumped in. Do you want to go through another one?
Well, I don't care. It makes no difference to me. Sure.
Cool.
Maybe we can help somebody.
Okay. All right. Well, this one, I think it actually kind of goes back to what you were talking about last week with, I think, was it last week that we were talking about the hospital stay? I feel like it might have been last week.
I have no idea.
Would know. She probably remembers more than I do.
Right.
So this question is, John, what is your perception, without a religious context necessarily, about death and or dying? Last week, you guys talked about getting a second chance after a near-death experience. How would you recommend somebody deal with the death of a loved one or someone that was extremely close to them if it was a little bit more sudden than they would like? And that one was sent anonymously.
All right.
I don't blame them because that's a heavy question.
Yeah. I am not really proud to say this, but I have been through a lot of that in my life. And it's a very, very difficult thing. It seems to get better with age because you go through it more and more often. And so you'll see the older you get. Here's what's interesting. When you're young, everybody's still alive, right? Aunt Martha's still there, Uncle Bob, neighbor Kevin.
Yep.
Everybody's still alive when you're young. But eventually you lose one and you go, wow, that was tough. I remember losing a neighbor at 19 years old. It just blew me away that he was 5 years older than me. He was just gone. But the one thing you have to understand is, and again, I've been talking about being honest. Let me be honest. It happens, but guess what? It's going to happen again. And it's going to happen again. And the only way that ends is when it's your turn. And so when you're doing that kind of thing, it's a difficult thing to go through. And depending on how close, I've said it a long time, or a lot of times, the greater the love, the greater the pain. Right. So the closer you are to somebody, the more damaging that's going to be to you at that time. But as a dear friend of mine said to me the other day, because we just lost a friend just the other day, a dear friend of mine said, the best part is to go back and the memories and to be able to say, wow, I'm so blessed I had that person in my life. Wow, remember the time we did this? Wow, remember the time they did this for me?
Okay.
And so as difficult as death is, and man, it's tough. It is tough. But as difficult as death is, you have to recognize, the best thing to do with death is to ride off from it. And so when something bad happens, the best thing you do with it is get away from it and remember the great memories you can. Because that's about the best way I know to heal is to remember the good days and the good times.
Yeah, that celebration of life rather than focusing on death.
Yep.
That was something that we were always really focused on as a family, was really that celebration of life, almost making a funeral. I don't think I've ever been to an Almasy or a Lahode funeral that there hasn't been a party afterwards. Yeah. Like it's always been funeral. Everybody comes in. There's halushki, haluki. There's Slovak foods. Everybody's reminiscing, and there's always been that second phase. So I've always thought about that with death and funerals and everything, just throughout my entire kind of existence. I guess that's always been a piece of it. And then I've talked to other friends that haven't seen that other half.
Yeah.
And all they've seen is their lasting image of death is really just body and casket.
Right.
And that's the last thing they remember. But I remember the nostalgia, the family dinner, the comparing memories and everything like that. And I think that adds, to your point, just a totally different layer of ability to heal and start walking down that path.
Yeah. It's a tough thing. I'm glad we talked about that because maybe whoever asked that question, needs to have something to think about. But it's a tough thing, and like I've said, I've seen it from many different facets, many, many times. And boy, seems like there's never a good time to die.
Yep.
And there's never a great way to walk through it. But like I said, the best way to walk through it is get away from it. And with careful reflection, remember the good times, the fun, remember the happy memories if you can.
Yeah. Well, good. So before we sign off, what I want to be able to do is, we always thank John for coming and stopping by and spending some time at APHHQ. But a reminder that not this Wednesday, but next at 7 p.m., we will be back. And I'll be expecting more questions. So thank you to everybody that submitted questions tonight. They were really deep. That was good. Question basis. So we have a very thoughtful audience, and I definitely appreciate that from you guys. What I would like to also plug, though, is I'm going to have John talk a little bit about one of the guests that he interviewed on his podcast, because for those of you that have been watching this, we've got almost 1,000 of you every week that are tuning into these live streams. we would love if some of you would come and listen to John's show, because there are some amazing interviews on there. They're about an hour long, and the population of people that are on there and where this is going to continue to go, I think is just amazing. So what I would like John to talk about is actually who I posted earlier today, who is Laura. And you had the opportunity to interview Laura as she took over as the first Latina president of the Parade of Roses.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk a little bit about how that interview really kind of came about, and maybe one of the takeaways from her, making that path from Argentina up to her position in the Rose Bowl.
Well, it's people like that fascinate me. And when I met her, I knew that she was a special lady. And so we had some pretty cool, pretty in-depth conversation. And I said to her at the onset of our, or at the aftermath of our meeting, I was like, your story needs to be told. And so I went to talk to her, and I asked her if she'd be willing to chat about it. The cool thing was she came from Argentina. She came as her family was running from a dictator, and she worked her way up. That's one of the amazingly great things about America, is that you have opportunities if you're willing to work, if you're willing to go out there and really try to get something done. And so in her case, she did. And she got a great education. She became an attorney. She's a very powerful attorney. One of the many beauties about her, though, is she likes to help people. If they can pay, perfect. If they can't pay, she still does not back away from it. She wants to help people. And so in her case, she was fascinated. So she works and works and works and keeps staying at it and keeps doing the right thing. And eventually somebody said, she worked in different groups, much like the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There's different committees, there's things to do. Well, she worked on the different committees. She was a leader. She was legitimate at each of her efforts. And eventually somebody said, hey, can you run this thing? And so then she became, like Jan said, she became the first female Latina president of the Rose Bowl. And she did an amazing job. She had to go out and go all over the country, I think all over the world, actually, to talk to some of these people that were bringing bands from different places and helping them raise money to make it to the Rose Bowl. And you can't spend time with Laura Farber without coming out of there and finding yourself a little better as a person, as a human being yourself, because she does such a great job. And in spite of her level of where she's reached in her career, she's still just a down-to-earth good girl that's just fun to talk to and loves life, loves her family, loves her children, loves her husband, loves everything. So yeah, Laura was a great interview, and she's a fascinating interview.
Awesome. Well, so for those of you that want to be able to tune into that, the show is called The Working Class Hump. You can find it on Apex Communications Facebook page. Laura's specific episode was plugged earlier today, so if you just scroll up in your timelines, you'll be able to see that episode specifically, click on it, and watch it. Actually, listen to it. Sorry, the podcast, not the live stream. So there are plenty of other episodes in there, including Jim Tressel, Kevin Warren, who's the current commissioner of the Big Ten. So definitely a lot of value inside of those episodes if you guys give them the time of day and really focus on what John is talking about and pay attention to the questions that he's asking. Because in those episodes specifically, for me, I've done over 100 podcast episodes at this point, and John has a way of asking questions to people that bring stories out of them that would probably not have come out in any other interview.
Right. To
the extent that Jim Tressel told a Woody Hayes story at the end of his interview, which, asked John if we had, a little bit of extra time left for a Woody Hayes story. That's one of my favorite clips.
Yeah, amazing.
Out of all of the shows. Like, I know we're running low on time, but do you think we have a little bit of
time
for a Woody Hayes story? Heck yeah, Jim Tressel, we got time for a Woody Hayes
very
story.
humble.
Oh, my Lord. Anyway, so thank you for tuning in, everybody. Again, another episode of The Deitz Playbook. I hope that you guys have found some value out of this today, and we will see you next time right here at 7 p.m. 2 weeks from now on Apex Communications Network. Until next time, keep chasing that Apex.